if we drill down from the perspective of, is it coming from fear or is it coming from love? If it's coming from fear, I feel that's the things that we need to change. If it's coming from love, even if it's uncomfortable or whatever, then I think we're on the right track.
Why do you think we're in a culture that is very fear dominant? Welcome to the Prime Life Project podcast, a place to help you unlock your full potential, both mentally and physically, to become the best version of you. Welcome back to another episode of the Prime Life Project podcast, a place to help you both mentally and physically become the best version of yourself. Today, I've had the most incredible day, I think, on record of actually doing this podcast. And for me, it's just sort of really highlighted why I've done this. So for those of you that have listened to last week's episode, we had Rory Green on from Enlighten the Shadow. Absolutely incredible podcast, which I'm sure you'll agree. And when my guest today came, Rory was still here. So I've actually been recording 2 podcasts back to back, and we've literally just sat down round a table, had some lunch, and I cannot put into words the gratitude and the energy that's been in this room with Mikey, Katie, and just all of us 4 guys just sat around, just talking about mental health, about mindset. And I've never in my life thought that I'd be in this sort of environment. And it's a bit bizarre for me. And again, I'm talking to my guest before we've just recorded this. We've been sat here in the seat for literally 25 minutes talking. The cameras have actually been rolling, but the microphones weren't on. And I'm just very blessed to have reached a point now where I can get amazing guests like this to come and actually speak to me in person and just have this conversation. And as I just said before I pressed record, it's not about me, it's about you guys, the listeners. Again, I connect with these amazing guests so that they can impart their wisdom to help you or someone that you know, or to potentially give you the tools and ammunition in your arsenal so that if life ever does take a bit of a turn, you can handle it a bit better and not hit rock bottom. So my second guest of today, and obviously today's episode, is the amazing Mr. Nick Edgar. How are we, Nick?
I'm pretty good, thanks, Dan. It's great to be here. I walked into that amazing energy you were talking about, and as a highly sensitive guy, I absolutely felt it. So I'm absolutely buzzing to be here.
So you mentioned it already, highly sensitive guy. Let's just go straight in. Let's just dive straight into this.
Let's do it,
so.
Man.
Talk to me about being a highly sensitive guy. Like, what is that? Because that's your business. Again, I know you work with your girlfriend closely as well, your partner. So what is it that you do exactly?
So I am a coach, as is my partner, Jess. Jess coaches highly sensitive women. I coach highly sensitive men. And the term highly sensitive really refers to a personality trait developed in the 90s by Dr. Elaine Aron. So it's really, if all of us as human beings are sensitive to some level. So high sensitivity really is about how we process our environment. It's about our senses and how powerful they can be. And that can work for us as highly sensitive people incredibly. It lends ourselves towards being empathetic towards others, to read a room when you walk into it, like I did today. Mm-hmm. But also there can be some downsides. We can be easily overstimulated. So if I'm in a restaurant, for example, and a waiter drops a load of plates and everyone starts clapping like they do and all that kind of thing, I can hear that noise, so that when that dies down, I'm hearing the ringing of that go on for quite a while. And it's hard for me to kind of let that fade down and then get back into being present with whoever I'm with.
That's really interesting. One thing that sprung to my mind as soon as you said that is, with great power comes great responsibility. So right there, you've got this amazing power, because again, we spoke about this a little bit off air, like we're energy beings. Yeah. Like that's what we are. We're energy beings living this world, living like very spiritual energy beings. So the things I got from there is, like, again, being sensitive. I think that we are born sensitive. And I think, especially as men, but again, women get this as well, but it's a lot more quote unquote acceptable to be sensitive as a woman, quote unquote. For a male to be sensitive, it's seen as weak, girly even. So it almost gets taken out of us from an early age. And you also get this when it comes to fantasy and daydreaming. Like as a young kid, like if you're very sensitive and you're fantasizing and you're in this different bubble and different world, being creative, creating things in your mind. Yeah. And as you mentioned, you grew up in an era where corporal punishment was still a thing, and you had nuns literally beating you. Yeah. Your sensitivity would have been beaten out of you, and your creativity beaten out of you. So you're quote unquote then like a robot. So What's your views on sensitivity and like culture as a whole? I know things have changed since you were at school and there's no nuns
thankfully
dashing out corporal punishment, but what's your view on this? Do you think that everybody is inherently sensitive and kind of loses that intuition towards it?
I feel that, as I said, everybody is on, if you think of it like an X and Y axis, like a graph.
Well, you trigger me
like,
here. You
like
trigger me. You're taking me back to maths here.
Just sit with that feeling. We'll dig into that in a bit. But yeah, basically, there's the big middle of people that, absolutely have sensitivity. There's the likes of myself that sit at the top end, and there are people that probably have low sensitivity, but we all have it. And I agree with what you said, that as males generally, if you think about how, if a kid is crying or screaming, generally, as parents, the first thing we'll try and do is, don't cry, it's okay. It's like we don't want to necessarily let them have that experience, to experience that sensitivity of what's upset them. We want to kind of change that feeling quickly as possible because we're all uncomfortable with it. So from that perspective, I absolutely agree with you that sensitivity isn't necessarily something that we embrace as a society.
I think it's interesting there when he said about the kid crying and said we're all uncomfortable, when really the person who's uncomfortable is the parent. Absolutely. And isn't it really like, so it's the parent there that feels uncomfortable. The kid doesn't feel uncomfortable. The kid wants something. The kid's trying to give you a signal. If it could talk, it's like, I'm hungry, I need to go to the toilet, I need this. But it doesn't know how to, so it's doing that. The person that only feels uncomfortable is the parent because they're thinking, well, other people around me are judging me. We spoke about this a lot in the round table we just had with Rory and Mikey and Katie as well. Like that whole thing of actually being judged by other people and that shame that's attached to it. What will people think? Like my kid's crying in the middle of the supermarket, like I'm a bad parent and all this sort of stuff, like ringing around. So can you talk to me a little bit about that as well? Because that's an interesting thing that just to talk about that.
Understanding emotions, starting with my own, has been kind of a massive, that's been like the beacon of my personal development journey over the last few years especially. So I absolutely agree that shame, I think, is the most powerful emotion that we all have, whether we know we have it or not. And that example is spot on in terms of something that a parent probably wouldn't think of as shame. They wouldn't identify that necessarily as shame, but that's exactly what it is. And shame is really when we place a great importance on our perception of what we think people are going to think and feel about us in any given moment. And when we do that, we're experiencing shame when we really dig in. So that kid in that moment doesn't know shame. It's expressing his or herself or their self. And I think that's really important to understand. And you're quite right. From babies to toddlers, probably from then 5 to 7, maybe, that's when kids become more aware of their environment and see behaviors and start to follow all that kind of stuff. But before that, they're kind of wildly free. So I do believe that as a society, we're uncomfortable with feeling strong emotions, and that's one of the changes that I'm really trying to make as part of my work now, because when we're uncomfortable about experiencing our emotions, we will bottle them up, we'll push them down inside us. And if we do that for too long, for too many emotions, a lot of really difficult things can happen.
What sort of things can happen from that? Because I think it's one of the biggest things when it comes to like emotional intelligence. One of the biggest things I think we lack in society is emotional intelligence. Obviously, the highly sensitive guy, like you pick up on people's energies and vibrations. That's something the more that I've lent into my spiritual self, I'm very good at picking up people's energy. I can really sense it. And I look back at some of the things that have happened in my life. I'm like, I had a gut feeling at this point, but I didn't act on it. Because again, it's one of the things where when you get these messages, these signals, if you ignore them, they disappear. But if you welcome them in, it gets louder and louder and louder. Then you can start to hear it, and then you sort of lean into it. So emotional intelligence, I think that's something that a lot of kids should be taught, and we're not. Essentially, for people going to spoke out off air, like your age, like you're a good few years older than me, definitely wasn't something that was spoken about. Definitely wasn't spoken about for me. Now it kind of is, but still isn't. So let's talk to people of our sort of generation. How do we get in tune with our emotions? Because if you've suppressed them for so long, you don't really know where to start. The way I liken this is like a factory. So let's when it comes to fat loss, for example. So using that analogy of fat loss, you get people that are morbidly obese. They have the ability to burn fat, but their factory and their body's ability to burn fat has been shut down for years. So you kind of got to dust it down. It's still there, it still works. It takes a while to get it going again. So it's very similar with this, isn't it? Emotions. The emotions are there. The factory is just a bit dusty and rusty. So the first couple of orders they put out are going to be a bit rubbish, going to be defect and default. So how do we work through this? figuring out our emotions?
It's a great question, Dan. And for me, the method that works, that brings the most results, is to bring space and compassion to a situation before we do anything else. So we're not going to judge anything. We're not going to do anything other than carve out a space to just start to sit with ourselves. And then if we start to talk about emotions, people that don't feel comfortable about it will generally pick big emotions. So let's talk about anger. That even saying anger. Can you feel something when I say it? You know, it's really
just the word, isn't it? The word itself, it's very loaded, the word.
Exactly. Yeah. There's so much power in it. But if somebody says they're feeling angry, if you drill down into words and emotions that sit under that, maybe it isn't the visceral anger that they're feeling. Maybe that's a collective set of emotions that they're feeling. Maybe it's part irritability. Maybe they experience irritability every day because they don't like the boss. Boss just winds them up. Maybe they're experiencing disappointment because they've not got a promotion that they need, or maybe they're not where they want to be financially. There's a whole range of emotions that sit under these core emotions. So when we talk of if you start to talk to someone and say, I just feel angry all the time, you can start to break it down into its component parts. When we feel emotions, we feel them in the body. And sometimes we feel them in different areas. So in tandem with that, I would ask somebody, well, where are you feeling this right now? I'm feeling this in my heart, or I'm feeling this in my gut, or actually my head's pounding. And again, starting to understand how those more, going to use Mikey's word here, nuanced emotions.
Honestly, Mikey should trademark that word. I think my most, the problem is with Mikey, he uses it all the time, and now we stopped using it. I'm like, he's like subliminally drilled it into my subconscious.
I know. I pretty like that one, mate. But then you can start to associate the specific, more detailed emotions in different parts of our body, so that then with that knowledge, our vocabulary in terms of emotion starts to grow. And then the next time we feel any one of these things, go to the body. Where am I feeling it? Oh, I'm feeling it here in my gut, not here in my heart. So actually it's irritability rather than disappointment. Do you see what I mean? And it's different for everybody. You know, there are some common areas, but I think mostly it's just about finding the space, leaning into it, looking at what sits under those core emotions, which I do believe all of us are aware of, or at least the vast majority of us, and taking it from there, just being curious.
One thing that I like, I don't know if you've used it, the emotions wheel, is something that I like to use with clients, where the pinwheel is like, for me, when you've got these big core emotions, to use another, I was talking about before, it's the same thing, just people potentially to hear it a bit differently. So with this, the way that I explain it is, it's like having a headache. So if you have a headache, that's such an umbrella term. Like, are you dehydrated? Do you have a brain tumor? Like, are you angry? What is, say you've got a headache is very loaded. So say you're angry, again, that's very loaded. And again, sadness, when we talk about depression and stuff, I'm sad. That doesn't really say much. There's so many things from there. So if you can actually get better at sitting with that and being like, how am I actually feeling? And again, we've said this before, like, ask yourself the question, because you know the answer. Subconsciously, you know how you're feeling. You just don't really know how to express it. So I think I've heard you mention this when we were talking earlier on about journaling. Yes. So what I get my clients to do, potentially if they're sat and they're not sure, today I'm feeling, and then just start free writing. Because the way I like about free writing is, like we spoke about talking, you turn the conscious brain off, so then the subconscious will start talking. So as you're free writing and you're not thinking about it, your subconscious is actually talking to you on this piece of paper. And then once you're finished, you can then get to the core essence of, I'm not feeling sad. I'm actually feeling disappointed. I'm feeling disappointed because Mikey did this and that, and it really hurt me. And it hurt me because it reminds me when I was a kid and my dad did this, and it's the same sort of thing. So you unpick it, that's where it's come from. And then you're almost empowering yourself by owning what actually is going on, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense completely. And relating it to if you want to become physically healthier, you will make the time to go to the gym or go running or do whatever it is to move in that direction and make progress. If you want to make progress emotionally, you have to do the same thing. You have to carve out time intentionally to practice it.
Oh, but I'm too busy.
Yeah.
I'm too busy. I haven't got time for that. And that's the thing for me, that it's that all of these limitations that people put in, all these beliefs, all of these things, like, where's that come from?
Yes.
Because for me, it becomes like meditation, for example, because I haven't got time to meditate. Sounds to me like you probably need to meditate. So how do you go back? So you picked up some great things here. So I want to sort of like circle back with this. I think naming the emotions is a very big thing. Yeah. Like actually, if you're feeling a certain way, don't just accept that you're feeling sad or angry, or just try and use the emotions wheel. I'll get Mikey to ping it up again. We've used it before. Like have a little look on that. And I get a whole podcast on that, how to manage negative thoughts and feelings. So go back and check that one out. But key thing you mentioned about holding space for it and show compassion with no judgment. I think that's a really hard thing for people to do nowadays. We sort of mentioned it about the shame, but slightly different from that.
Yeah.
Like the judgment thing. I think nowadays people's biggest problems are themselves. They are their own biggest problem because they're creating stories and narratives in their head, and they're attacking themselves, and they're literally living in a world that hasn't happened yet. I find myself doing it and I make myself laugh. Like someone say something about something, and before I know it, I'm having a 10-minute conversation with myself, getting mad about something that hasn't even happened. I'm like, what am I doing? But I'm aware that I'm doing it. Most people don't realise. And if you sit and people watch, you can really see that people are really inside their own head.
Yes.
So do you think that's a bit of a problem we've got nowadays, about this inability to have the awareness of what's actually going on inside our head?
I think the first thing I would say in response to that is that our body doesn't know the difference between something that's actually happening and something we are imagining. So we will still have an emotional experience. And I would take it a step further than that. If you are used to experiencing certain emotions, you are going to seek out, your subconscious is going to want to feed on it. It's going to want to create that emotion in you again, however it can. And one of the ways it does that is through thought and catastrophizing or fantasy, whatever it is. So I absolutely believe that to my core. So catching ourselves doing that is really important. Catching ourselves doing that and recognizing the emotion that maybe is trying to feed is really important. And when we start to do that, we can start to unpick it. And that's where, for me, compassion comes in. Because compassion, like the word literally means to suffer together. So to recognize without judgment that I am creating scenarios in my head in the shower in the morning about how my day's going to go. And actually there's a lot of negativity in there. So I'm creating these emotions in myself when I think about that. But why am I doing that? Well, I'm doing that because I'm used to feeling those emotions. Well, I want to change that narrative. I want to be different. I want to feel excitement and joy about the possibilities of what could happen, whether they go my way or not. I want to fantasize and get excited about it. So I'm now setting a different intention. And I believe that all of us have that innate power inside us. So when you phrase it as one of the problems today is that we're all in our own heads and we're all doing this, it's because we haven't got the knowledge that we can do anything different.
I think the thing is that I want that intention, because I think your intention dictates your attention. So again, where you putting your intention, like we'll just say internally, that's where your attention is going to go. Kind of very similar to where attention goes, your energy flows, but just take it a bit deeper about your actual intention behind it. But I think the biggest thing, as you said, it's the fact that people don't know. And what I like to do with people is to give them a choice, because people don't realize they have a choice. And every day they're making choices and they don't realize. And they don't realize they've got decisions to make. And even not making a decision is a decision. And that's basically what people are doing. And I had a great guest on to have a crazy conversation about free will. And basically, my whole analogy of life is that we're all going down a river. And you can't paddle upstream. You have to go in one direction. And most people aren't aware they can steer their boat. So their boat just ends up where it ends up. And that's it. So from the day they're born to the day they die, the boat just kind of is. And along the way, they'll have some amazing moments just by chance. But we actually have the ability to dictate where the boat goes and move it in the direction we want to. And even if the destination you want is so far out of the way, as long as you can just think, that's where I want to go, you can start to steer your boat in that direction.
Yes.
So how do you get people to, in your coaching practice here, how do you get people to gain that initial awareness? Because for me, the biggest issue when I was struggling was that I was so engrossed with that voice inside my head, because that voice is me and it is the people listening. So again, you're not crazy. When you're talking to them, you hear that voice inside your head that is you. You're not crazy. Everyone has it. But for me, it's understanding that voice. You've got the best version of you, the real, true, authentic version of you that does want to succeed, that does want an amazing life. And then you've got this subconscious voice, this narrative of all your beliefs. And when you're so engrossed, you can't differentiate between the two. So how do you teach people to just separate and gain that awareness? Because it's all kind of mentioned here. It's all about the awareness. If you're not aware of something, you can't do anything about it.
again, I'm going to use the same word again, but compassionate inquiry. So it's to ask them questions, to ask questions of themselves without judgment. So you use that analogy of the river, and that we're all going down it, whether we like it or not, and it's how much in control we are of what's happening. And I use the word control loosely. How much choice, how much intention we bring to that ride. So, I'm just going to pause there because something's come into my head and I've totally lost my train of thought at that point. Just remind me again.
The question was about how do we get people to gain awareness? The awareness. Yeah.
So actually, the people that I work with tend to come to me because they've realised that they are in a cycle that they're not happy with. And somewhere inside them, there's a voice going, I can do more than this and I can be more than this. But I'm having a conflict between also feeling this is just where I am. I feel stuck. I'm not sure there are any other options and I need some support. So first of all, actually, I think they've already reached that point before they come to me. It's like, myself for a good portion of my adult life would be sitting in spaces going, I know I can be more than what I am, but I'm also thinking this is the best that I can be right now. This is all I deserve. And that conflict, when you become aware of that conflict, that's when you ask for help. So for me, I pick up the baton at that point, hold space for them to describe it in their own way, and then to be able to ask questions of themselves, just to start to break down some of those limiting beliefs. To allow that potential and that tiny little voice that they've recognised is there to come to the surface and actually really start to live and breathe.
That's the end. As soon as you give that true version of you, that true essence of you to come through, it's then like, we're just talking about this with Rory. Like once, even if you're in that dark place, again, normally for me, when you're in that dark place, when depression's taken hold, whatever it is, or even anxiety, that voice, that belief system, so loud. Yes, it's hard to see the light.
And crucially, and I'm talking from my own lived experience here, but for me, crucially, I absolutely 100% believed everything that voice said without question for years.
Yeah.
The premise now that I tell everybody that I work with and anyone that wants to listen, our thoughts and feelings, they're not real. They're not us. They're not who we are. They are part of us, and they can serve us or they can actually work against us. But just believing verbatim that everything we think and feel is real and true, that's the biggest misnomer I think that there is.
I think for me, when you're struggling with stuff, let's say, for example, you're now, would you choose that?
Would I choose?
Would you choose whatever it is and to feel a certain way?
Yes.
No. Okay, well, who's choosing then? Would you choose to act a certain way? Would you choose to be going down this path? Well, no. I know I'm better than that. Okay, then who's choosing? And this is where you unpick this. You unpick it because then you realise actually all these beliefs and stuff actually weren't yours. They've been handed down to you from your parents, from your teachers, from all of these things. Exactly. And we spoke about the conscious and the subconscious. The conscious is the gatekeeper of the subconscious. And when you're young, you don't have that conscious brain to stop these things going in. So you get all this information loaded in. And then you're like, oh dear. And then, like you said, mentioned here, like the subconscious, and it seeks out the thing that it knows. So if you've got this belief system sat in the subconscious that you're not good enough, then you're not worthy, all the information that tells you are good and all worthy, you're not going to focus on that because your reticular activating system isn't focused on that. It's basically trying to find confirmation that you aren't good enough.
Absolutely.
So that's what you see, and you seek out more of it. So again, talk about the intention. So if your intention is to unpick this subconscious thing, your intention will then determine your attention. You're going to start to focus on other things, and then once you start to focus on other things, that's when it changes. But we're on fire here. I'm loving this, by the way. I just want to unpick something here because you used a word, and the word, Mikey, you're going to love this. The word is ambivalence. So I'm going to use this in a sentence. I'm going to use this here because it's kind of what I've been doing a lot of studying myself through my mentor. I'm just going to read this paragraph here. You saw mention it. It's like, that's ambivalence. And I've never heard it apart from in here. You mentioned it. A person who fails to develop their ability to make decisions is doomed because indecision sets up an internal conflict that can, without warning, escalate into an all-out mental emotional war. Psychiatrists have a name for this to describe these internal wars. It's ambivalence. The Oxford Dictionary tells us that ambivalence is the coexistence in one person of opposite feelings towards the same objective. So what we're saying there is when they actually realise this, the way they're living, and then the second thing pops up and it's like, I've now got these two things for this one thing, and that's when the conflict, because they're like, I've now got to make a decision here. do I want to stick and hold on to my old beliefs that have kept me safe?
Yes.
Or do I want to step into this new, looks a bit better, but I kind of don't know, and it's really scary and unsafe? And that's where I think people, again, reaching out for a coach or a mentor, and or not even as a coach or mentor, reaching out to people like, again, you Rory, you me, you Mikey, whatever it is, to guide them through that process, because it is scary, isn't it, when you start to realise there's another way?
It is. Can I swear?
Yes.
It's fucking terrifying when you start that road. I must have done the hokey cokey for 10 years before I really committed to it. You know, it was like, it was so uncomfortable that my anxiety would take over, because all these parts of ourselves we've been talking about, the subconscious, ultimately, however they show up for us, they have one intention, and that's to keep us safe. So if we're trying to change fundamentally our experience, who we are, how we feel, what we want to achieve in life, there's going to be an awful lot of discomfort. So the way I like to phrase it is that we have to learn to become comfortable with being uncomfortable in order to push through. And when you have that first breakthrough, if you like, real breakthrough of having pushed through a commitment to a road which is quite difficult, it's, you know, that breakthrough is possible. And once it becomes possible, you can't go back.
No.
And that's what it was like for me over probably a 10-year period of hokey coking in, oh, I'm ready for change, I'm ready to do this. No, I'm not ready for change at all. I want the comfort of doing all the same things I've done before. And temporarily that would work for me. But then I'd be like, oh, I'm back in the same place I was before. So now I'm ready to move on again. Oh yeah, I'm going to start doing so. I'm going to start doing it. I'll do it for a couple of days or a couple of weeks or even a couple of months. But then it's, no, I'm not ready for this. There's too much shit coming up. I'm not ready for it. And that's okay. I think that's what I want to stress as well, that a lot of people I speak to will say, I've tried meditation, it don't work for me. Oh, okay, that's interesting. How many times have you tried it? I tried it once. Wow.
Yeah.
Should we just sit with that for a minute?
So did you try walking once?
Exactly. No, do you know what I mean?
Like, oh, so, okay. Did you get in a car, try it once, and it just happened to work for you? Oh, great. Like,
but it's so incredible how these limiting beliefs can just take hold of us when you do put a spotlight on it and look at it in a safe way. When I see clients just have that revelation moment of, oh my God, why do I believe that? That is when you know that you've really hit an amazing point, and that they're starting to understand that questioning what they believe about themselves and their experience can be really powerful. And I think that for me is when I see the kind of light come back in their eyes, or really take hold of, you know what else can I use this process for, and what may come of it if I continue to commit to it.
Because that's the thing, isn't it? Like, we're all basically a bunch of paradigms, which are basically a group of beliefs. And again, the word belief is something without factual proof. So essentially, we've got beliefs about money, about people. So when I go into school, it's one of the key things I talk about. I basically get them to finish a sentence. People are, money is, success is, school is. I'm like, if you've got all these negative beliefs, I'm like, is there anyone, if you think every person is an arsehole,
Yes.
like, you're setting yourself up for failure, because you're automatically going in with the preconceived view that every person you meet is out to get you. Or if you think money's evil, you're never going to get money. And the amount of people that've got, even the word money, people hate talking about money. Money is not an evil word. Like, money is an amazing word. Money allows you to do things. Money allows me to get Mikey here to record this podcast to help more people. Money is amazing. The problem is, I've got this view, this belief, again, with no factual proof, that in order to have money, you've got to steal, stab people in the back, be a horrible person. It's not the case at all. So when you actually get these beliefs and then start to question them, where have these come from? Because then when you start to question them, it all falls to pieces, because like, oh, well, it's basically what my dad always told me. Oh, well, is your dad rich? No. Okay, let's look into that then. So you had this view about money, and do you want to live that life? No. Let's go and pick that. You also put some really, honestly, the stuff you're saying, talk about words after before, like absolute gold here. So absolute commitment as well. Making a commitment to change. Like, do you actually want to change?
Yes.
Like, do you have an ability to change? Yeah. Like do you have a willingness to change? Yes. And are you able to change? Yes. Cool. So that's two things. Are you able? Yes. And are you willing? You've got to have both of them, because by definition, you are able to change. Like, some people, that you are able to change.
Yeah.
But are you willing? Are you willing to pay the price? Are you willing to commit? Yes. Then cool. Then that's when amazing things happen to you. And then you linked in something here about the subconscious, which again I love, about it keeping you safe. So these beliefs and everything you've done, it's designed to keep you safe. And one of the biggest things that I do for clients that, again, have got a lot of weight to lose, they've got a lot of these beliefs and this old identity, is get them to write a breakup letter with themselves.
Amazing.
from a very compassionate place, because they got such hatred towards that version of them that got fat. I'm like, no. That's kept you safe through so many hard parts of your life, because food was your comfort. It was your happy place. Like, and you're hating on it. No. Break up with it. Say thank you, but I've got this now. This new version of me has got this. I don't need this. And just write a really lovely breakup letter to yourself. And it sounds really silly. I've done it with 3 clients, and every single one of them has dropped a substantial amount of weight, because they're releasing that old identity, because they're held onto it for so long for safety. Once you realise you don't need that anymore, like, you've got it. You right now is this version of you. You've got it. You don't need that old version of you that's not serving you. Let it go.
No, there's so much power in that. And for me, that's kind of veering into sort of inner child work as well when we do it. And actually, sometimes writing the letter the other way round as well can be really powerful.
Almost like a response back.
Well, yeah, or almost before we write the letter to soothe. It doesn't really matter which order, but I think it's important to honour who we were. And I loved the way you just said it was serving them. In that moment, that was how they coped. And I'm really fascinated with all of our coping mechanisms as human beings, even what society might deem as some of the unhealthy ones. So I think they all serve a purpose, and to dismiss them and to judge ourselves as weak or incapable of dealing with life at that stage without doing whatever it is we were doing does us a great disservice and really holds us back.
Because like, you're doing the best with the information you've got.
Yeah.
So like I talk when I go to schools, I go to the really underprivileged schools. They don't know any other way, some of them. So you look at their parents. Let's go back to the mining. Also, look at how people dealt with all the stuff happening with the miners. All these little villages in the middle of nowhere turned to alcohol. Why? Because their life, in an instant, got completely taken away from them.
Yes.
How else are you going to cope with that, apart from to just pretend it doesn't happen? Because they don't know any better. These aren't quote-unquote well-educated people. They weren't given support. They weren't given any sort of way to deal with this. So it's like, I hate this reality. I'm just going to escape. And they use these things to escape.
But listening to you then, I would reflect that what I'm hearing, it takes us back to that ability to cope with difficult emotions. So the circumstances are what they were, absolutely. But it's that inability to cope with emotions that makes us seek methods to numb out. And it doesn't have to be alcohol or drugs. You can numb out by going on a shopping spree. You can numb out by sex or going to the gym or doing any one of these other things. So that bringing mindfulness to it and learning and everything we touched on earlier, again, really can serve us in those moments, whatever life hits us with.
It's trying to give people the empowerment, isn't it, to take back control? So that's essentially what we're trying to do. We can't control life. No. We can't. Life happens. Like, I think that's we spoke about on the balance one where you said this to You can't control other things. All you can do is control yourself. And to be able to control yourself, you have to know yourself. You have to know what's actually going on. So when these like dashboard lights on a car, my old car loved to give me all these different lights that popped on. But as human beings, when these lights come on, we don't know what to do. But isn't it so great we can teach yourself the ability where if something externally that you can't handle or can't control, this warning light goes on, and you're like, this warning light means, like I said to you before, it means this. I've got a strategy to how to sort of deal with this and what this sort of means for me, because that's what we're not fundamentally taught. And that's where I think we, as a society, have been let down, because this information is out there. Now, we have gone on a journey to find this information. We haven't gone up to the middle of the Himalayas and found some crazy monk sat there. Like, this information is very easily accessible, but we're not taught it.
Yeah, I have some personal opinions about why that might be.
So let's go down there. I'm sure my audience is very sick of me saying the same stuff, because they probably think I'm a nut job. But again, off air, a lot of the people I have on the podcast, I've got a lot more relaxed with this recently, because my view is that I don't want to be talking about that sort of stuff, but it's got to a point now where you kind of have to talk about it, because for me, society is set up in a way for people to fail. Like we said about the sensitivity, we're not meant to be sensitive beings. We're not meant to know our own true potential, because they can't control people that actually know their true power. We are extremely powerful, and the more I dig deep into this, the more annoyed I get with how I've been suppressed, and more importantly, how I have suppressed myself. Okay. That's what bothers me, because it's like the society that we live in doesn't easily lend itself to creative free thinkers that are actually going to do amazing things. That's my view.
No, I hear and feel exactly what you're saying. I feel like I've been through the emotional experience of annoyance and disillusionment and all of those other feelings, and I've kind of come out the other side. And I asked the question, can it be any better than it is at the moment for where we collectively are in terms of a species? And I'm not sure I've quite come to a definitive answer about that. I'm still being curious about it. I do believe that ultimately, if you look at any kind of, say, assessment of looking at humanity as a spread, or even in this country, let's leave it to this country. Myers-Briggs will tell you there's 16 different personality types. The Enneagram will tell you there's 9 different, and there's 3 versions of each one of those 9s. And there's all these ways we can look to measure human beings. Any kind of society that is collectively trying to put institutions in place to function, that is its chief aim. It's to keep society functioning. And the metaphor I would choose is that it's like a comet that's flying, and bits and pieces are falling off left, right and centre all the time, but it's never stopping, and it's never going to stop. I think, therefore, I'm not sure that, certainly not in our lifetimes, and probably not for a few generations after us, will we potentially get to a point where society will realise we have to do something fundamentally different right from the top down and the bottom up. So in the meantime, in order for me to process the annoyance, all of those negative emotions that I associate with everything you've just described, I've had to think, what influence can I have as an individual human being in my lifetime here? And that for me has allowed me to make peace with some of the things that I find abhorrent or difficult or unfair, all of those things. I recognize I'm a single human being. I try and collaborate and get to know other people that are thinking and feeling in similar ways, and there's a great deal of power in that. Think back to the power and the energy that I walked into today with all of you, because you've set up something and you've spoken already, and I think that's how things begin to change. And we all have that choice.
I think that's the thing. It starts by us taking responsibility for ourselves and what we can control, rather than getting frustrated about these other things. And you're completely right. I think that's the biggest thing. People get too bogged down on all these things externally. Yeah. Okay, with every single person on the planet, every single person, just for 5 minutes, just looked inwards and took responsibility for their life and controlled what they could control, the world would be a completely different place. The problem is, we spoke about this again before we started. Excuse me, the world we live in is very lack-centered. People are coming from a place of lack rather than a place of abundance and a place of like prosperity. Like we think that there's a finite amount of oxygen and no. All these things, like nothing's running out. Like nothing's ever created or destroyed. Like energy can't be destroyed. Like there's enough of everything out there. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, especially men, we spoke about this again, we could go down this little rabbit hole, come from a place of lack, and they don't want to share things. They don't want to bring each other up because they're afraid that if I bring you on my podcast and we're very, very similar, then what if I lose clients to you? Rather than being from a case of, I know my own ability, I know I'm good at what I do. If people resonate with you differently than me, then awesome, because actually some people of your audience are going to resonate with me more than you. Awesome. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it's about other people and basically us as a collective helping other people. So it's not coming from a place of, right, Mikey, you've got to edit some of this out. He actually gave some golden nuggets here and I don't quite like that. But you get, we laugh, but that's normally where it comes from. It's like, oh, I don't want to connect with him because he knows a bit more than me. It's like, well, actually, why don't you go and learn? Why don't you actually just come from this place of actually being a creator rather than a competitor, rather than trying to compete with other people? Why don't you try and actually create with them? And that's something that I've really tried to shift my mindset in, and getting out of trying to compete with people and realise actually I'm a creator, and if people want to try and copy off me, then that's great, but I'm still creating. I'm not trying to compete. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. To me it does. It's again been one of the most fundamental aha moments that there is more than enough out there for everybody. It's where what and where we choose to value, and how much of that we've decided for ourselves, and how much has that been given to us by some of these things we've already discussed. So I completely agree. From my own point of view, I know that there are going to be people out there, an unlimited number of people out there, that when they find me, I will connect with them at a level that's meaningful and they'll want to work with me. There's also going to be a whole range of people that won't. And some of them will be near misses, and some of them will be like, I don't agree with the fucking word this guy says. And all of that's fine. And it'll be the same for you and all of you in this room and everyone in the world. And therefore, for me, especially in this space, competitiveness comes from, we spoke about this earlier, it comes from a place of fear, not love. And I think sometimes if we take the time to sit back and say, why are we thinking, feeling the things we do? If we drill down from the perspective of, is it coming from fear or is it coming from love? If it's coming from fear, I feel that's the things that we need to change. If it's coming from love, even if it's uncomfortable or whatever, then I think we're on the right track.
Why do you think we're in a culture that is very fear dominant? Do you think that's by design? Like, because again, from fear, fundamentally, we all want to be loved. Because again, if we're left up ourselves, the dinosaurs can get us. So we want to have that sense of community. But nowadays we have access to, so I can go on my phone right now and basically try and search for almost any human being on the planet that's got social media, which is scary as hell. But as you sort of said, it's like, if I'm trying to get everyone to like me, then I then can't like me because I'm not going to be my true authentic version of myself.
Yeah.
You've got to come from a place of, I am me. You either like me or you don't. If you like me, fantastic, let's go and create something.
Yeah.
If you don't, that's absolutely fine. Have a great life. But we can't seem to get head around that. We're trying, I think as a species, we're trying to impress other people and live up to other people's expectations at the detriment of actually finding out who we truly are and how amazing we are.
Yeah, I feel we're all hot-wired for connection, but sometimes the desire for that is so strong that we lose everything else in order to achieve that. And it serves us in the short term, but long term it doesn't, because we're abandoning ourselves in order to achieve that connection. And it's the abandoning of ourselves that starts to create a disconnect between how we are out in the world and how we feel inside. And that is something I 100% resonate with, because I spent so long in my life doing that because I didn't know there was any other way. And I feel that it's really important. If there's one thing as a takeaway from this and all the other podcasts that anyone listening to this listen to, it's that there are always other ways. And I think when you discover the way which is meaningful to you and continue to do that and continue to reflect and evaluate and be open to change and growth, everything changes, and it changes forever. Now, I cannot stress enough, that doesn't mean you're not going to have times of struggle. You're not going to have times of frustration, disappointment. All those other human emotions are still going to be there, but you will develop a resilience to those times that when you're not aware of it and you're not self-aware of it, that resilience is so hard to have as a natural trait.
We spoke about this again off air. I want to just touch on a few things that he said. I'm going to quote Dumbledore about doing what's right, not what is easy. So again, sort of paraphrase that and what we're talking about now, it's about doing what's right for you, like to actually grow as an individual, not taking the easy route. So when you're faced with a choice, don't go back to the easy route, because that's that comfortable thing. Do what's right for you to actually grow and develop. And then from there as well, talking about the resilience side of things, I think we spoke about this as well. I think the self-help space, like coaching space that we're in, I'm not perfect. I know you're not perfect, because we're human beings and no one is perfect. We're all flawed human beings, and that's fine. That's okay. And I think the biggest lie that is told is that you can get to a place where you're always happy. And that's, I think, this land of make-believe that people are trying to aspire to. And that's where people then think they're somehow failing as a human being. Because it's like, well, I listen to all Dan's podcasts, I do what he says, and, you know, when my cat gets run over, I still feel sad. I want to be happy. It's like, no. Like, that's not how this works. But we're almost like forced on social media, but you have to be happy all the time. Like, why do you think that is a thing? Because that's, again, baffles me. Like, why do you think it's pushed that we've always got to be happy? And then on the flip side of that, how do we build this resilience? Let's answer the first question first, then we'll go to resilience. So why do you think that is a thing of, like, we've got to try and always be happy?
Who wouldn't want to be happy all the time? It's enticing. It's enticing and alluring.
But if you think about it, would you want to be happy all the time? Because then it then loses its power, isn't it? It's like when you go anywhere and you have too much of a good thing. On paper, it sounds amazing, doesn't it? Like, and I know you know this, but like the audience, because I bet they're thinking, yeah, I'd love to be happy all the time. But would you? Have you ever thought about it? Would you? Like,
it'd be boring.
It's like I love the sun, but I couldn't live in a place where it's always that hot, because it'd get boring and be too oppressive, and like, this is too much for me now.
Yeah, but I think, but it's that love and fear thing again. I think it's like when this kind of organizations or people in this kind of space that are kind of promising that nirvana of this perma state of whatever you want to call it, set of emotions, they're tapping into that desire from a place of fear of not wanting to ever experience the difficult emotions ever again. Whereas if we accept that we're fundamentally flawed as human beings, we're imperfectly perfect, and that we can learn to sit with those really difficult emotions and experiences in a way that we haven't done before, life becomes all the richer for those difficult times, which I think is what you're trying to say about would we want to be happy all the time? Would we fuck?
Yeah.
But what we don't want to do is completely fall apart if we have to experience grief, for example, or disappointment, or being cheated on, or all of those things.
That's the difference there, completely falling apart. That's the difference. So something happened to me again earlier on this year, and it hit me hard. Like I said to Mikey and Kate, the two people that have really opened up to about it. It's the worst I've felt since I was depressed, but very, very similar feelings of just not in a good place. But I didn't completely fall apart. And that's the difference. And again, I talk about the positivity paradox about like the better you get, like you go from being in the relegation battle in the football league table, let's say, you're in whether you're second from bottom or third from bottom, you see a relegation fight, it makes no real difference. Like even in the red zone.
I love a football metaphor, mate.
So
Can you just carry right on?
So I love this. And then basically as you go up and then you get to a place of like 10th, so you're now mid-table. When you go from 10th down to relegation zone, that is a bit of a jump and it's kind of quite familiar. But you start to get better and better and better, and you get to this place where you realise how amazing life is. You've taken control of your life, you're owning it, you're amazing. You're now in the European spot. But now you drop down 12 places. So you're now still in a mid-table position here, which again, you'd have taken that when you're in relegation zone. But it's that jump that's what we struggle with. And it can seem like we're again catastrophizing it like the world's ended. But if you actually take a step back, you're like, actually, that was nowhere near as bad as when I was at my lowest and most depressed. It just felt in that moment.
Exactly.
Because I've fallen from this place of absolute euphoric high and out of nowhere, I've been blindsided and now I've dropped. But actually in the moment it feels like that, but it's not. And again, especially if we're in the champion, we're first place. You drop 15 places, you're still not in the relegation zone, but wow, that's a big fall. And it's that fall that causes us to be like, I'm a failure. So I love what you said there about not falling apart. Because that is key there, because that's what a lot of people do. And that's what I really struggled with. It's like, no, you haven't fallen apart here. You've actually handled this a lot better than what we've handled before.
I absolutely agree. But it's embracing then the experience of feeling that with the knowledge that you have fallen from wherever in the table you were, and the knowledge that you have been there and that at least that is possible. And who knows what else. You have that ability to kind of put your kit back on and get back on the pitch. And that will happen if you honor the drop, learn from that failure of what's gone wrong, and it won't happen again. Or if it happens again, it will be slightly different, and then you'll learn from that, and then you'll learn from that. And learning through failure is one of the biggest things I've learned to embrace. I love it when I fuck up now.
I do, mate.
I hate the moment of it.
I
hate the moment of it, and it's really uncomfortable, and I have to work really hard. But I absolutely fundamentally know that it will pass.
And it's going to teach you something.
I will learn something which will make me do something different in future, which will allow me to do something new and possibly even greater.
That's one of my favourite things is like in the moment it sucks. And this way, again, people that talk about it sucks. It sucks. When you like things are amazing and you go backwards, quote unquote backwards, like it does suck. But understand sometimes you've got to go backwards, then go forwards. Like an arrow can't be propelled forward until it gets pulled backwards, like one of my favourite quotes. But again, we're sold this false lie of that you can't go backwards. If you go backwards, you're a failure.
Yes.
But again, the laws of the universe, everything has an up, everything has a down. You can't stay constantly going forward. It's not how life works. Look at just anything in just nature. Like you can't always be on the front foot. That's not how it works. There's a time and a place to go forwards. And I fully believe that if you've been in a place of euphoric high, like I was, my life was amazing, and then this thing comes in, knocks you off course, in that moment, the universe is saying to you, that wasn't your path. I've got something way better for you. Yeah. You just need to go into this place here. I'm getting rid of some things for you, whether it's a partner, whether it's a job, whether it's this thing. I'm just getting rid of some stuff for you because I've got this bigger thing over here, and that's going to hold you back. And that's exactly what's happened now. Like the fact that Mikey said early on, like when Roy was here, he's like, you never would have got this way you were before. No, I wouldn't. I absolutely fundamentally wouldn't. And my life now is absolutely amazing. But again, I'm very aware for how long. But then when it's not, okay. Now where's it taking me? Now what's this teaching me? And it's just that whole thing of like I've got here on the board, like hard work is the goal. The reason I've got that on there is because like life is hard. It's not going to be perfect all the time. It's just enjoying and being grateful for when things are amazing. And then if you can get gratitude from when it's not amazing, that's when you're winning, because nothing can knock you off course. If you can be grateful and happy in the lows, who the hell can take that away from you? That is like superhuman, like level stuff there.
Yeah, I like that. I think for me personally, I would say that being the best I can be, being the best Nick I can be, is not being the best Nick I can be all of the time. Because the minute I deviate from that path, judgment comes in and there's a pressure for me to get back to the best Nick. As a highly sensitive as well, I only have a finite amount of energy because I experience everything so viscerally that I have to be mindful enough to recognize when my cup isn't full and accept that I'm probably going to have a 60% day, and that's okay. That is absolutely fine. That for me is being the best I can be that day. Do you know what I mean? And I think one of the things that I learned through some of the freelance work that I do, if we think of our nervous system, there's many ways we can think about it, but I like to think of it in three ways. That we have our kind of fight or flight moments. We have these moments where we feel under threat, and we all know where, most of us know where that comes from. It comes from our, deep roots, and it sits within us, and it can happen at any time where we get triggered. And generally we'll seek one of two paths. We'll either look to go into our drive system and take action and respond to that threat by doing something, or we'll look for safety. We'll look for our affiliative system to get rid of that fight or flight. So some of us are more, I think all of us choose one or the other more naturally. For me, I'm an absolute safety seeker, not going into drive. And for that reason, every time I stick in drive when I'm not ready to be in drive, when I know I'm not going to be 100% Nick today, if I try and be 100% Nick today, I'm just going to make myself more knackered for the Nick tomorrow. And so on and so on and so on until I burn out. So everybody's got different thresholds, and everyone's got different preferred ways of going. And I think it's important to recognize that when we think of our best and our potential and achievement and going for our goals, that's going to look very different from a day-to-day basis, a week-to-week, a month-to-month, even an hour-to-hour, or 5 minutes to 5 minutes sometimes. And that self-awareness for me, I think, is really important.
I think for me, the biggest thing I do is take naps. Do you want to start to notice that I'm wavering? I actually need to, I guess I use the word nap. I don't really nap. Sometimes I do nap, don't get me wrong. Sometimes it's almost like a meditative state where I just need to unplug from all the sensations that's going on. So when we talk about sensitivity, like I wouldn't say I'm necessarily sensitive as you appear to be, but I've noticed a lot that my energy, and I'm very aware that I can pick up people's energies, I can take that on, and I'm very aware that sometimes I try and push when I should hold back, which is why, again, I've got the PlayStation 5 now. So people laugh and joke about that, but for me, it's like when I finish work, I would not have a stop button. So I'd be pushing. I've got to keep going. And basically, I thought I was working 100%, but I wasn't. And basically what I find now is that, for example, the list of stuff I had to do this morning, before these two podcasts, I've smashed off so much work that would have taken me all day to do. Yeah. Because I thought I was working 100%, but I wasn't. But now I have that off switch. I can unwind, like you said, pull back, just play it safe, which is what I needed when this recent thing happened. I was just like, I'm just going to sit on a computer game all day. Because that's what I needed. And
that's amazing. Whereas because I tend to want to dip into the other way, I'm likely to stay small and keep safe and keep quiet and have to say, no, actually, I need to put this bit in today because this has to get done. This is a non-negotiable.
So you do nothing. You almost like just stay in bed all day almost, or avoid.
I'm coming to the same situation, but just from the opposite angle. Yeah. That's just the way I'm naturally built.
I'm trying to understand it.
As are other people. So I won't naturally want to power through. I will naturally want to just sack it all off. Yeah. And I've been like that all my life. Even we haven't even touched on our backstories and the similarities in that yet. But it's something when I reflect back on younger versions of me that I understand why I made the decisions, good, bad, and indifferent, that I did. Yeah. So now I'm consciously trying to learn that when I hit that moment of I'm an 80%, 60% Nick, but I need to be 100% today. I need to be. I can make that choice and power through, even though that's not the natural choice I want to make, and vice versa.
It's interesting with the word NLP before as well. The word need, I need to be, and it's asking, well, why do I need to be? Like, and that's the thing for me. Like, that's what I always find is like, for me, I've got a lot of people who've got to show up for, and sometimes that pressure becomes a lot. And that sometimes it's like, sometimes like I said there, like rather than me going from it from that angle, I do need to, I just said, do the opposite and just take myself away to get myself into a place so I can then actually go and actually help and serve other people, because I can't be the best version of me. It's again, if I'm trying to just run myself into the ground, it's like, I use the car analogy, we're driving, all the lights are on, I'm trying to just keep flooring this car. It's like, right, just take it into a garage. So I'm taking it into a garage and it's been taken care of. I can then actually floor it, get to my destination quicker, using less petrol, less energy. It's going to be a smoother ride. And it's just like, well, actually, like if you can actually come at it from that point of view, whereas with you're the other way. You're like, well, actually, like all my engine lights coming on, I'm just going to go into the garage. And that's kind of like, again, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing at all, because you're taking yourself away and you're recognizing for you just need to be away from that, get yourself okay, and then you can then show up. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's like that, just being able to know what you need and want, which is essentially what you're saying.
That's and it's different for all of us, which brings us back to that self-awareness, doesn't it?
Yeah. And we haven't touched on your story. I think we'll have to have you back on to talk about that, because we've been going for nearly an hour.
Have we?
It's literally been absolutely flying. And I realised this halfway through, I thought, literally not spoke about this guy's story at all.
That's hilarious.
I was like, but again, we spoke about very, very similar backgrounds. We will go to it on another episode, because again, Jess, your partner, was meant to be on. Yes. So potentially when I get Jess on as an individual, I'll get you to come on and we'll redo your story. I think it's a fascinating thing, because you do have a really interesting story about how you got into this, but just naturally this conversation has just flowed. And again, for me, it's just been a really powerful episode. Again, it's like we did with the Roy one earlier on. It's been very, very powerful. And again, the audience has taken a lot away from this. So my final question I'd like to ask all my guests, what's one bit of advice that you would give to someone right now that feels lost, stuck and out of control?
Lost, stuck and out of control. I feel I would just look them in the eyes and say, it's okay. It's okay that you feel this way. Just honour it. Try and get to know it. Try and understand what it feels like, where it is in the body. And if I had to give something practical to do, it would be box breathing. To just harness the power of your own breath, which is a tool we all have, but maybe don't even recognize. And box breathing, very simply, is you breathe in 2, 3, 4, you hold your breath for 2, 3, 4, you breathe out 2, 3, 4, and you hold it 2, 3, 4. Continue to do that, focusing on that, and you will feel yourself calm down. It doesn't mean it will solve whatever's going on for you by any shape or means, but in that moment that you need that support, it will be there for you.
It just allows you to come back to a place of centre, so then you're in a better place to deal with it.
Exactly.
And that's what it is. The problems don't go away. No. You just get a better awareness of how to deal with it.
I think it brings the problems into perspective.
Oh, it's a great word. That's I think what we lose track of, isn't it? Perspective.
Yeah.
Like in that moment, we feel like the world's going to end. And the reality of it is, it never is. Yeah. And the sooner we can realise that, the sooner we can get from a place of, right, what can I do to sort the situation out?
Yes, so we go from disempowerment to empowerment.
Yeah, absolutely. Where can we find out more information about you?
So Instagram at The Highly Sensitive Guy, or my website, nickedgarcoaching.co.uk.
Honestly, this has been, again, an amazing conversation, and I've really, really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Mate, I've loved it. It's been great meeting you, and I can't believe it's been an hour.
Mate, it's absolutely flown by.